and he was genuinely respected for it the world over. He was the world's diplomat. The Belgian charge d'affaires says the English are increasingly getting into the habit of seeing international problems as almost exclusively coming under the remit of King Edward, whose profound political instinct and productive diplomacy they very rightly respect. And I mean, there really hasn't been another king like him. And we come now to the Entente Cordiale. The king wants to improve Britain's relationship with France. The government says, no, Your Majesty, it's not the right time for any sort of compromise at all with the French. The king says, I'm the king and I think this is wrong, so he starts making plans for a mini royal tour, and he puts it together himself. He plans on visiting King Carlos of Portugal, King Victor Emmanuel of Italy. He pays a courtesy call on Pope Leo XIII. That was a big kerfuffle between him and the government. He, again, the British king or queen is head of the Church of England. You can't go meet the Pope, who's head of another church, or so the thinking went. The English upper crust was very anti-Catholic until recently. So he planned on stopping over in Paris, though, during his trip. He kept the foreign minister, he kept the Queen, he kept his private secretary and the British ambassador completely in the dark about what he was doing. Charles Harding, who was a junior undersecretary at the Foreign Office, he was a friend of the King's. He was the only one that was in, I guess, cahoots with him and working with this plan. So the French, though, picked up on rumors about what the king was trying to do, and he was obliged to let Edward Munson, the British ambassador in Paris, in on his plan. And Munson thought the king's plan was sound. He took it to the French president, Loubet, and just for the sake of time, Loubet, Munson said Loubet could not lay too much stress on the influence in which the king's presence in Paris would have on friendly relations between the two peoples. Munson, I got the impression, was kind of a suck-up and would just tell the king what he wanted to hear. This was my impression anyway. So the king, while on his cruise, just before I begin, there's a version of this story I'm about to tell you in which the President of France, the King of England, and a French soprano, an opera singer, were banded together somehow to engineer the Entente Cordiale. Interesting, but something I couldn't prove, so I'm not presenting it to you. So the king's on his cruise. He visits the kings of Portugal and Italy, like he said, and he just happened to find out that Loubet was coming back from Algiers. And he gives the orders from his yacht, the Victoria and Albert, which you can see there. Again, they put everything on everything, postcards, cigarette boxes, all sorts of things, the Victoria and Albert, the royal yacht. And he sends a flotilla of gunboats out to salute the French president. This is something that Loubet cannot ignore, and he says, come to Paris and have a visit. It'll be great. And it wasn't. The king accepts the invitation, and he probably shouldn't have, as I just said, but then we wouldn't have had the Entente Cordiale, and we probably would all be speaking German right now. And he informed his government. The government, HMG, His Majesty's government, says no. The king says yes. The king goes anyway. Loubet, unsurprisingly, exaggerates dramatically King Edward's popularity. The papers in France say he's fat. He runs through every Anglo-French incident, starting with, unbelievably, Joan of Arc. And they declare that the king's visit shocks, offends, and revolts us patriots. And right, the spider you can see, that's an interesting bit of German propaganda that I found. Depicts Britain as a giant spider sitting on a web that encompasses France and its North African colonies. Strands reaching over the horizon entangle the United States, Canada, and India. The spider leers at the German eagle as it gobbles up a French soldier. Meanwhile, German U-boats patrol the edges of the web, cutting the strands with scissors. The postcard constitutes German propaganda aimed at the French, warning of Britain and her pernicious influence.